This is Katie Willette, welcoming you all to Now You Know. Chris Perkins is our host, and we have a surprise for you today. So, take it away, Chris.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to Now You Know. It's our last show of the season. We'll be back with you in September, and we saved a good one for last. And this is kind of a family affair here this morning. Our station manager, our cameraman, and chief cook and bottle washer, John Harlow, is behind the scenes today, but we've got his dad, Doug Harlow from the Morning Sentinel. And Doug, welcome aboard. Glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And we finally got you here. We've wanted to have you on the show, I guess, going to Katie for quite some time, and thank you very much for showing up this morning. And one thing to talk about this morning is, of course, almost everybody knows Doug Harlow with the Morning Sentinel. And Doug has been with Sentinel, I understand, for 30 years.
30 years in January.
Excellent. And you've covered a lot of stuff in 30 years with the
Absolutely. I started out covering the town of Bingham as a correspondent, and that ultimately included Solon and the forts up that way. And hit the ground running. There was always something going on. If you were there to see it, it was happening.
Oh, yeah. And you've been in the actual Skowhegan Bureau for how long?
Well, I started out in the Skowhegan Bureau in January of 1988, working as a contracted correspondent. Worked with Amy Calder, among others. And then in 95, they hired me full-time staff, and I moved to Waterville, started covering the town of Fairfield.
Okay, and then you got back up to Skowhegan somehow.
Yep, 10 years ago, last month, I was transferred back to Skowhegan when Darla Pickett was getting ready to retire.
Ah, that's right. And of course, our viewers all know Darla Pickett because she's been, well, particularly on the Keeping Pace show. So, and Darla had been a correspondent for years. And did you work with Betty Withey at all?
Absolutely, yep. I knew Betty very well. She was, she did her weekly, over the fence. What was it called, Katie? Betty Withey's column, Neighbors. It was called Your Neighbors.
Something like that. That's right. And she would, and what a wonderful lady. She's another person who was on one of our TV shows, Keeping Pace, too, for many years. And wasn't she one of the originals?
Yes.
Katie? Yep. So we've gotten several Morning Sentinel people who have converted to television here, Doug. So I think maybe it's just a natural transition to be able to do that. Now, Doug, I did my little bit of research on you, and I understand you moved up here from Connecticut in 1987.
Yeah, my wife and I moved up from Massachusetts. I was born in Connecticut.
Okay.
Went to college in Connecticut, and ultimately moved to Boston and started traveling the world. Met my wife in Newburyport, Mass. in 1979.
Yeah.
And we moved to Athens, Maine. We bought the farm, as it were, in 1986 and moved here when our daughter Georgia was 4 months old in 1987.
Ah, okay. And so you've been at it. It looks like you've been kind of a gentleman farmer here all these years too.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. We tried, going back to the land. I mean, not exclusively for income, of course, but yeah, I raised pigs for 18 years. Bred them right on the farm. We raised beef and chicken and turkeys and vegetable gardens.
Yeah, I saw that. Then I saw also you grew apples.
John is in charge of the apples. He's planted several trees, and we have some heirloom varieties that John is attempting to bring back into production.
Okay. And I hear you also maple syrup. You do maple
John
syrup?
does the maple syrup.
Ah, okay. Do you sell any of this? Is this just for your own consumption?
It's just our own consumption. We, my wife's primary crop is garlic, which, we have our own seed now going on for probably a dozen years.
Yeah.
My primary crop is cayenne pepper,
Aha.
which I love.
I kind of enjoy it myself.
Oh yeah, I have cayenne in everything.
Yeah. I like spices. My wife can't handle the spices quite as much, but I really enjoy that stuff. Absolutely. So it sounds as though you grow about what you need on the farm then.
Well, yeah, we right now we have 2 vegetable gardens. One's mine, one's Mary Lou's, my wife, and I'm growing corn, sweet corn, Marvax beans, which is an heirloom dry bean, which I'm told was the original Maine baked bean.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
And I'm told Native Americans use the Marvax with maple syrup, and
Ah.
we use molasses.
So is your theme kind of like growing heirloom type
Well,
stuff?
You know, somewhat. But the corn, for example, is not heirloom. I tried growing some heirloom sweet corn last year, and it was chalky and
Yeah, yeah.
not very palatable.
Maybe that's why they don't grow it anymore.
Well, that's my theory.
Yeah.
You know, the varieties that survived the test of time survived for a reason.
Okay, yeah.
And,
Yeah, that's right. That's
and
right.
that's why the other varieties fell by the wayside. They weren't as tasty. They weren't as hearty. They didn't keep as well as some others. And the same is true with apples.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there is probably a reason why some of these did not survive the test of time. Really.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now I understand. For you came up here, you were in Boston for a little bit, and
Yep. I drove taxi cab in Boston
but you were, I forget the name of it. You were a poet as well.
Poet,
Remember
yeah.
a poet?
at the Stone Soup Society.
Yeah, and I'm not aware of that. What was that?
Well,
about?
it was a group of Boston poets, and we were situated in right on Cambridge Street, coming down adjacent to Beacon Hill,
Okay.
in one of the last buildings left in the old West End
Yeah.
of Boston, and we would meet regularly at poetry readings, and ultimately it shut down, and I read some of my own poetry during the final week with one of the peak poets from San Francisco, Lawrence Berlinghetti.
Ah, okay. Do you still write poetry?
I do, but it's thinly disguised as like weather reports or little vignettes that I keep to myself or I post on Facebook.
Ah, I see. Now you, so anyways, you come to Maine, and you do find a job with the Morning Sentinel.
Yeah, that was odd circumstance in that when we arrived we didn't have employment, and I was working building log homes with a local contractor in Athens, and a friend of mine who's living in New Hampshire at the time saw an ad in the Boston Globe for bureau chief for the Pittsfield
Ah,
Bureau
okay.
of the Morning Sentinel.
Yeah.
So I applied. I said I'm a good writer. I can handle it. And I didn't get the bureau chief job, but they hired me on as a contracting correspondent.
Okay.
And like I said, things moved really quickly from January 1988, getting my feet wet, to Thanksgiving Day 1990, when the first of my big stories unhatched in Fairfield. It was the Thanksgiving Day double murder on a back road in Fairfield, right on Thanksgiving Day. And that started me on a long journey of covering cops, courts, judicial system.
Oh yeah, and you have covered many of those types of stories,
Right.
and unfortunately, it's been a little bit more active here lately too.
It has. Things have changed around here. I remember we used to joke if we had an armed robbery, it was big news.
Yeah,
Now with all the drugs out there and the opioid problem, there's robberies all the time, and drug overdoses, and unfortunately more of domestic violence.
and does all of that, or I shouldn't say all of it, but does a lot of it stem from drugs? All our crime problems now, or the increase in crime problems?
To me, the root of all evil is unemployment. When the mills shut, when the shoe shops left, people didn't have anything to do,
Yeah,
and they were left dangling without employment, without the self-esteem of being employed and being productive. And I think the jobs going offshore is the root of our problems.
yeah, can certainly see that, and you've been through that since you've been here since 1987, 1988. You have seen a lot of the mills go by the wayside, and unfortunately, there haven't been that many alternatives.
No, there haven't. I think people are optimistic about the future of Madison paper, in that the site can be sectioned off for new companies to come in and utilize the space. Backyard farms are very productive. But the shoe shops are gone. The grist mills and the regular mills that used to employ everybody, those are gone, I believe.
Well, I certainly remember the times in this area where you had, when the shoe shops were going full speed, and you had the main spinning mill, and all of those, that people would earn, the middle class seemed to be larger, and people would earn a reasonable living and stay in this area.
Right.
And you, as I said, in your 30 years, I mean, you've seen a lot of it.
Solid manufacturing.
There's another one.
It
Yeah.
was a big one on the island in Skowhegan and in Solon, and it just went away piece by piece. Luckily, we've got Sappy,
Yeah.
and we've got New Balance,
Thank goodness.
and Reddington Fairview. Those three entities employ a lot of people around here.
Yeah, thank goodness. And they're all, good paying jobs with good benefits. Thank goodness. I know the SAPI employs, I think, near 1,000 people, like 900 people.
Yeah. Yeah,
And New Balance has got to be pretty close, right? And the
I
hospital,
would think so.
I think, is like 700 people. So thank goodness we've got those big three. But even those, like New Balance was kind of in a precarious position. They were talking about the trade deal with
Yeah.
Southeast Asia and
Yeah,
so forth.
the Trans-Pacific Partnership was not good for companies like New Balance, and people would disagree with me. Um, Donald Trump didn't like the TTV, as they called it. Um, but New Balance, I think, has benefited from the scuttling of that Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Yeah, I think so too. And boy, Sappy Paper we've been very fortunate with them. They seem to be a very nimble company that has adapted with the times, and while other where other paper companies have gone by the wayside, they have stayed and I think flourished.
Oh yeah, they've adjusted their production. They're now making packaging
Yeah,
as well as paper, and that's very important. That's hard thinking ahead.
oh yeah, very good. And the funny thing, when I remember when they first came here, they had bought it from Scott Paper, I believe, and Scott Paper was considered a very good employer in the area. And Sappy was a little different, and it required quite an adjustment period.
Right, they were from South Africa.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
And
what Sappy stands for.
that's right. And they, I think, had a different way of looking at things, and they were probably looking at things more in a world economy as to what they had to do to compete. And I remember, labor-wise, there were some disruptions down there for a period of time.
Yeah, I think they were probably minor and very quickly
Yeah,
resolved, because we never had any real job action
yeah,
at Sappy,
that's right.
like we saw in Jay and Livermore Falls.
That is true. It was maybe people being shaken up a little bit by the changes that were being imposed on them, but I'll tell you, I don't hear anything too negative now. Everything seems to be going pretty smoothly down there. So that is good. So I mean, Doug, you've covered an awful lot of stuff in your 30 years of the Morning Sentinel, and I don't think there's been any much bigger issues than some of the ones that you've been covering recently.
The big one is the 800-pound gorilla, is the Skowhegan Indians mascot issue.
Yes.
And there are many people that support keeping the name Indians, and that's where it sits right now. There's no action in place to change that.
There's gonna be some pressure though, because Wells was the only other one that was out there, and they gave up the warlike.
The warrior, and they called it the image of a Native American with the name Warriors, and their school committee voted to eliminate the imagery and maintain the name Warriors, which is pretty generic.
Yes.
The Columbus Regional High School did the same thing very quietly a couple of years ago.
Yes. And so there's going to being the last one, you got to figure this issue is not going away.
I don't think it's going away. I don't see it being resolved right away, though. The Penobscot Nation, they've been pressuring the district to drop the name Indians, but it's not as easy in Skowhegan as it was in Wells.
You've got some people who are very, very passionate on both sides of the issue,
Right?
and I think the board right now is letting it rest for a period of time, but I can't see that this isn't going to be brought up again here pretty soon.
Right.
Yeah.
It was in 2015, going on 3 years ago now, that the board voted to keep the name and the imagery, and then nothing has changed since.
You've been another major thing that has happened here, and I don't think I've I'm not sure in my lifetime I've seen a bigger news story than this Gene Cole, John Williams
Right.
story.
And it's on the front page today
It
as
is.
well. You know, it's not something anybody's gonna forget.
I have, and I guess, the shooting of a cop is a very traumatic thing, and it aroused passions that I don't think I've ever seen to this extent in the community, and the involvement I was reading about, and of course you were a key contributor on this story. The involvement of all facets of all these different facets of police and border patrol, and you had police from Maine and New Hampshire and Massachusetts involved in this manhunt.
The FBI was out there.
FBI, and there's like at least 200 people. I live on Bigelow Hill in Skowhegan. I had helicopters flying over my house as part of the manhunt. We were not a long distance from it, but a little ways out of the center area.
Right, there was a grid, a search grid, where everything moved in slowly, hour by hour, day by day, until they isolated this one small camp off of Martin Stream Road,
Yeah.
and they got him there.
Yeah, but have you ever? Yeah, I mean, of course, you were right in the middle of it, and you wrote many stories on this. But have in all your years, have you seen a much bigger local story than that?
And I've never seen a larger police presence for anything that's ever happened in Central Maine. The command center was at the new Norwich Walk Fire Department fire station, right behind the Grange in downtown Norwich Walk, and never seen so many police.
It was just
They were
unbelievable.
determined that they were gonna find this young man.
Yeah, there was a high level of alert and paranoia going on. I'll give you an example. This was I think a couple days after Gene Cole was shot. I was parked on the side of a road in Madison off in Route 43, looking at, I'm in the real estate business. I was looking at a piece of property out there, and I just parked, and a sheriff's car pulls up behind me, and what I believe he was trying to do was read my license plate, and I was about ready to get out and say, what's the issue, and then he took off. So I'm almost thinking that all related to what was going on.
Right. They were not leaving any stone unturned,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Oh, absolutely amazing. You've covered. I mean, crime coverage is one of your major thrusts
Right,
over the years.
right.
What are some of the other major stories that you've covered over the years?
In terms of criminal justice, you mean?
Yeah.
The shooting death by police of Catherine Haggerty in
Yeah.
1992 up in Jackman.
That's right.
That was a big deal. And the Thanksgiving Day double murder in Fairfield that went on for 2 trials at the state level, in which Hubert Hartley and Henry Lombard, half brothers, by the way, pointed the finger at one another, and both of them walked. Both were found not guilty in a state court, and so they moved it, charged them with conspiracy for bringing a firearm that was manufactured in Massachusetts, bringing it over the state line, making it a federal offense, and they tried them at the federal level, and they got a conviction on Henry Lombard and a minor conviction on Hubert Hartley. Hubert Hartley is still living somewhere, I think in Massachusetts. Henry Lombard
Mm-hmm.
died of suicide in prison. some years later.
Yeah,
But
I'd forgotten that.
since then, after the Catherine Haggerty thing, there's been no end of homicides that we've covered, that I've covered. The one that hit me, perhaps the hardest, was in Skowhegan. I forget the year. A 14-year-old girl named Sherry Johnson stabbed her aunt, Hazel Davidson, 103 times
Oh, yeah.
with a kitchen knife, and she was a tall, beautiful young girl. And her trial was in Farmington during the winter, and it was really psychically very moving
Yeah.
to watch this young girl and then not offer any motive.
I guess what brings a person to do something like that? I mean, that's incredible.
Right?
That's something
If
like
we
that.
knew that, we might be able to prevent it, but there was never a motive that was brought out. And then there was the trial of Bella Gogan. Some people may remember. She was an older woman living on, I believe, the Parkland Road. Either in Athens or just over the line. And she killed her husband and chopped him up
Yeah. Oh.
and brought him to Brighton Plantation and distributed. I don't know, I hope I'm not getting too graphic.
But it is amazing because we at least used to think we were in this rural area that was immune to this type of activity, that you were kind of limited to petty crime and stuff like that.
Right. But we're never immune to human nature.
No. Were you involved in the coverage on the Luke Tiemann?
Absolutely, right from the beginning to the end.
There's
That
another
was
one,
a bizarre one.
and he has never admitted to.
Oh, he has not. Well, I believe he was suggesting all along that his wife, Valerie Tiemann, had died from a drug overdose, which was not true. And the jury found him guilty of knowing and intentional murder.
And rapid fire, they made their decision. There
And
wasn't
it
much
took
doubt.
less than an hour.
Yeah. And that is pretty rare, isn't
Yeah,
it, in cases like that?
They didn't believe his story right from the beginning.
Yeah. Any other major crime stories that you've covered? I mean, in your 30 years, I mean, I've already heard some major ones thus far.
Again, homicides, the murder of the Colby girl, Colby student. Again, I don't remember what year that was. That was in the early 2000s, I believe. Where a guy who was on parole from out of state stalked a blonde college student and murdered her. And I forget his name now as well, but he was a scary dude.
Yeah.
We were in court in Augusta, Kennebec County Superior Court when they brought him in, and I was sitting near two young female Colby students who were on the school newspaper, and they brought him by us, and my dad instincts took over, and I grabbed those girls by the back of their shirts and lifted them right out of that guy's way because he looked scary and threatening,
Oh my.
and he eventually addressed the seated media with obscene gestures, and he went away for life, I believe.
Oh. You know, as I said, you'd like to think of us living in this idyllic rural area, but unfortunately, you've been right in the midst of a lot of these bad stories. And
Right, and I tried to think of them all in one time, and I can't even remember some of them.
did you? How did you happen to? Obviously, you've been doing a lot of these. They must think you're doing a pretty good job on this.
Right.
Yeah.
I fell into it, basically.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was a poet in Boston and thought I was a pretty good writer.
Yeah.
And I learned one thing is important is that I learned from the editors how to write news.
Yep.
I would file a story, and the next day I would look at how the editors, treated some of the phraseology, the editing itself, and I learned from that.
Okay.
And so I learned from my editors. I wouldn't tell them that, but
Now the other areas that you cover, I mean, you obviously are covering municipal government.
I'm scouring at municipal government right now. We are short-staffed at the moment, so Madison municipal government is getting neglected, which is unfortunate, but we don't have the staff. So right now I'm covering Skowhegan town government.
Yeah. How have you found that to be over the years, covering government? Is that you
I
cover?
find it very interesting. I used to do real estate transfers
Yeah.
over in the court, the registry of deeds, and it's remarkable how much information you can find
Yeah.
in a real estate transfer, but municipal government I find it to be very interesting.
Have you seen a lot of changes in municipal government over the years? I mean, in Skowhegan, we've gone through a number of town managers since you've been there.
Right.
Obviously, you were there during the Pat Dickey
Right.
era, and now of course, we have Christine Allman there.
Right, she's doing a very good job. I think Skowhegan, oddly, unlike a lot of other communities, has been relatively smooth going over the years without a lot of controversy. We had the big one now is the fireworks. The town meeting voters agreed to allow the sale of fireworks in Skowhegan. You could already shoot them off within state guidelines, but now you can buy them, and somebody's opening a store in the old movie gallery.
That didn't take long, did it?
It did not take long.
That was a matter of weeks after that vote, and there's, I'm sure they're getting ready for 4th of July.
Right, and I'm getting ready to write about them. I just haven't been able to get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they took off like a skyrocket.
That's a good way to call it. Katie, you have a question?
Chris, you have talked about changes, and I know that there is a sign that says Morning Sentinel on the corner of
Yes.
Court Street
That's right.
and Water Street, and there have been a lot of changes. I even remember the personal column that is no longer available. But the editor, the gal that used to write it, used to call up my grandmother all the time.
Right, I remember.
So maybe you talk about some of the changes that you have seen.
Well, there's been a lot of changes. When I covered the town of Madison in the mid-90s, well now early 90s, I would cover everything. I would cover water district meetings. sanitary district meetings, you know, planning board, selectmen of course, and now we've kind of elevated the news coverage, and I say elevated because the low-level stuff, we don't have the staff, we just have, correspondence.
That's right.
At one time, there were 3 reporters in the Scouting Bureau, and now I'm by myself, and we had a gaggle of correspondence all over the place, from Athens up into Bingham, Anson, and we don't have any correspondence anymore.
You must be a busy guy, Doug.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ready to retire.
Yeah. I don't know what they're going to do to replace you.
Well, there's young reporters out there that I'm sure can do the job.
Well, you know that it was a big change actually in Skowhegan when you moved from being on Madison Avenue over to the corner of
Right,
Court Street.
and that coincided. It was a very, very busy time. That coincided with Gene Cole's funeral in
Oh,
Bangor. It also coincided with me having to coordinate the removal of archived newspapers from the upstairs apartment in that building. And I've got tremendous support from the school superintendent, Brent Colbury, who got some folks from the career center to help us move,
thank goodness.
and the Skowhegan History House, Museum and Research Center, and Dale Jandro at the library.
Library, yeah.
They all helped, and we moved all of the archived bound newspapers to the old Bloomfield Academy on what is called Main Street, Skowhegan,
Yeah.
opposite the Coburn Mansion.
Okay.
And we were moving, and we were getting new telephones at the same time. We had to hook up the internet service. It was a very trying time.
Oh, I bet.
And that Friday was the Luke Teeman sentencing
Oh God.
that you mentioned. So I had to write that story from the probate court because we had no service at the new office.
Well, you're certainly still in a pretty good spot. People can find you pretty easily.
I like where we are. The old building was hard to keep warm
Yeah.
in the winter.
Yeah.
But,
And they've done quite a few renovations in your building now, so
yes.
it's in pretty good shape. You know, we're talking about changes over the years, and one change. I mean, look at what's happened with your newspaper since you first came on. Now you've had several ownership
Right.
changes. How has that been to go through?
It was a rocky road for some of the period of time. We were owned for a very short while by the Seattle Times, and that was interesting. But we got a lot of lumpy changes, and now under the current ownership, things are, there's investment in people and in property and in delivery of the news. And I think we're that much stronger because of it. People are always going to read the news. They say, oh, the newspaper is obsolete. Well, even if you're reading it on the internet, somebody's got to write it.
That's right.
Somebody's got to go out there and interview the town manager or the police chief. And so the news will continue. But let me interject here. Speaking of all the changes, me personally, I now speak with an electrolarynx, which we haven't really talked about, and I imagine people might be wondering,
Sure.
what's up with that. I had throat cancer, and it was diagnosed when my son John was playing Little League, and I would be yelling at the boys and girls, yelling, baseball stuff.
Yeah.
And at the end of the season, I was a little hoarse. And then one year, the gravelly voice didn't go away.
Mm.
And so we went to the doctor, and it was diagnosed as throat cancer. And that was, I had my surgery July 5th, 2005. So that was a long time ago now.
Yeah.
And I had to learn to speak with this. And I was out of work only about 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And I came back, and it was difficult at first. People did not understand me on the telephone, and I still have problems with people understanding me.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you how that has impacted what you do. I mean, obviously, here you are. We're interviewing you on this show, and your voice comes out, I think, pretty loud and clear.
Yeah, does it? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. I've had to make a lot of adjustments, but I didn't give myself any options.
Yeah.
You're going back to work, and that was that. And I went back to work,
And you're still doing it.
and I'm still doing it. Going on, what's this? 13 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have not. Well, obviously, it's a handicap to an extent, but
It
you.
is. I don't mind calling it a handicap or a disability. I'm getting adaptive equipment on our new phone system to make it a little easier for me, because it's tough talking and writing, taking notes.
At the same time,
At
yeah.
the same time,
Yeah.
like dribbling a basketball and chewing gum.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I've made it work. I use a tape recorder quite a bit for interviews.
Well, I guess I'm used to you talking like that, and you're perfectly understandable to me, and
That's great.
I'm assuming you're going to be understandable to our audience as well. So you've certainly
I hope so.
overcome it. That's for sure, and continue to do the good job that you've done for all of these years.
And I think that that's a message, to everyone, to anyone, despite what setbacks you've been dealt, you can still achieve anything and everything that you want to achieve. And you gotta be, you need grit,
That's a good term for it.
and you need to believe in yourself.
Absolutely, and technology has been a big help there too, to
Technology,
be able to do that.
Without this electrolarynx, I wouldn't be able to talk.
That's right. That's right. Now, speaking of technology, I mean, your business has changed absolutely amazingly. Okay,
Yep.
and the younger generation now probably doesn't get much of their news through a newspaper, do they? They may get it.
They go online, they see it on Facebook, they see it on Twitter, and they'll go to our website. I don't believe they're picking up a newspaper as much,
No.
but they're still finding the news.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you something. Of course, I'm a little older too, and I'm part of the generation of reading newspapers, and my habit every morning is to go out to the mailbox and get not the mailbox, but the Sentinel box.
Yep, the blue box.
The blue box, and get my newspaper and have coffee and read the newspaper every morning. And of course, as part of your subscription, you get it online too. And when I'm away, occasionally I will read it online, but I still like the idea of holding the paper in my hand and reading it that way. And I still enjoy it. It's still my habit. in the morning to do that. But you guys have had to adapt completely to a younger generation that doesn't have those same types of you've had to go digital, and you've had to rely a lot on that technology, and that was pretty tough period of time of transition and tough financially, I think, on the paper, wasn't it?
Yeah, financially, I would not know, but I know now that we rely on Twitter
Yeah,
quite a bit.
yeah,
Um, it's a race often. Yesterday, for example, we had to get the updated story on Corporal Cole onto our website and therefore onto Facebook and Twitter as quickly as we could,
yeah.
and we accomplished that.
And in this day and age of consolidation, I mean, back when you first started, there was the Morning Sentinel, and there was the Kennebec Journal, and the Main Sunday, Portland Press Herald, and the Main Sunday, and you'd all kind of independently do your papers and publish right in the
Right.
communities. And now everything is shipped down to South Portland and everything.
Well, the Morning Sentinel still has its own identity.
Yeah,
The Kennebec Journal has its own identity. And we are, the Press Herald and the Sunday Telegram is like the mothership.
yes.
And we contribute to them, and they contribute to us, but we're still the Morning Sentinel,
And
and we like that.
I like that idea rather than having one consolidated paper, which would probably be predominantly Portland area stuff if were that the case.
I don't think financially that would fly. People in North Anson, Maine want to know about what's going on in Somerset County. And we will continue to have a presence in Somerset County. We get a lot of help from the Press Herald. For example, on the CMP transmission line. I don't know if you saw that coming down from
Oh, yeah.
bringing hydropower
Yes.
from Canada right down through the Kennebec River Gorge
Mm-hmm.
and then over towards Lewiston and on to Massachusetts. The Press Herald has picked up that story because I did some early stories on that in wind power, but it's just way too much going on for one guy.
That's going to be another pretty controversial situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for sure. Katie, you had a question, I think.
Well, we talked about fake news because the three of us were at Margaret Chase Smith's for the speakers that they
That's
had
right.
about fake news. So I don't believe that the Morning Sentinel has fake news, but you might want to touch on that.
Well, we very much dislike the expression fake news. That's not an expression that I would use. No, the Morning Sentinel. When a story gets in the Morning Sentinel or the Kennebec Journal or Press Herald, we make sure that we talk to everybody that needs to be talked to and that all the facts are correct. Now, sometimes you're gonna make a mistake, but it's not, purposefully misleading the reader.
It looks as though you're really trying to report the news and trying to be accurate in what you're doing, and I certainly see that on a local level. What do you think on a national level, though, and some of the stories and the slants and the decisions to cover? I think fake news is not a right term, okay, and I agree with you. But slanted or colored or
Oh yeah, that happens. I'm sure it happens. The left will cover something with its own perspective. The right will do the same thing. And
and you see, I mean, whether you're watching CNN or MSNBC or Fox on the TV side. I mean, they are all not only slanted in how they report the news, but very slanted in what news they decide to report.
Right, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and but have you locally? I guess from my perspective, I'm not sure I've seen any changes there. I think depending on who owns the paper and who the writers are, editorial wise, that the editorials may change or the slants may change.
Right, we are not told what to cover and what not to cover. We are independent journalists where if somebody's covering the Winslow Town Council and the school board, they will cover it, to the best of their ability. We're never told, oh, don't go near that or don't touch that. That does not happen.
We've had a situation recently with Sinclair Broadcasting, okay, and I guess Channel 13 would be an example of that.
Right.
And their news anchors were told to, they were given a spiel, I guess, I forget exactly what it was, to broadcast, and they were told basically, you have to do this to represent our corporate positions. The Sentinel doesn't do anything like that.
Nothing like that.
Yeah, that type of stuff kind of scares me, and
well, where that's coming from. So.
Yeah, and you're going to get more and more of these, whether it be Sinclair Broadcasting or somebody else, where they're buying more and more of these stations and they're putting on their own editorial lines and so forth. But the other thing, Doug, I mean, we live in such a hyper-partisan world right now, and I think, personally, I think a lot of it has to do with the types of coverages that we have, and if you're a right-wing guy, you feel more comfortable watching Fox, and if you're a left-wing person, you're more comfortable watching MSNBC, and they basically kind of feed and corroborate your own opinions of the world, and it's kind of dividing us, don't you think?
Yeah, there's definitely a divide. I don't watch either one of those two.
You're probably better.
I do watch CNN. I feel that they're more down the middle than MSNBC or Fox. But there is a slant to the news. Yes, indeed. And like you said, what to cover as well as how to cover it. Exceedingly, happening that way.
It's unfortunate right now because of the high level of partisanship right now and the lack of civility, I think, that's going on in this country.
There were a couple of broadcasts about the 1960s on CNN and the Vietnam protests and everything. And I think things were far worse.
Yeah.
During Vietnam than they are now.
Yeah, and that's a point. And I think those of us who went to the Margaret Chase Smith Center and talking about fake news, and it's not like this is brand new. Okay.
Right. It goes all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. People spouting their own opinions and calling it news.
I think part of the issue is the level of bombardment that we have now. You get news so quickly and from so many sources, and back then you didn't get that quickly, or in some cases not at all.
Right, you had to wait till Walter Cronkite came on at 6:30, or wait for the next morning newspaper.
At least back then there was a level of trust. When you were watching Walter Cronkite, you said, I can trust this guy, he's telling me the truth and all that stuff. And everything now is like on a slant.
Well, I don't know. Some of that is because you've been told that there's a slant when there might not be a slant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've got that.
If you're continually told that don't believe the media, perhaps ultimately you won't believe the media.
Yeah. So you're not a believer in the terminology fake news.
Not at all. I don't like the expression. There's misinformation and propaganda, as our speakers said the other day at the Margaret J. Smith Library. And then there's straightforward journalism, which I think happens, more than the misinformation. I'm an optimist. I'm an eternal optimist. I believe in people. I believe in the American people. I believe in the media doing the right thing. So I'm not worried.
And I think I remember when and what's the fellow's name that owns your newspaper?
Reed Brower.
Yeah, I think I remember when Reed bought the paper. He basically has, he's a publishing guy, and I think he said, I'm going to be kind of hands off and give
Definitely.
my staff, the editorial people, and the management the opportunity to exercise their own opinion.
Absolutely, we never see him.
I
don't see him.
I think that's fortunate in a
Yeah.
way.
And we've got good management now. That hasn't always been the case. And I think we're on the right road.
Now tell me, you're getting closer to retirement, right? And
Yeah.
where do you see the future of the Morning Sentinel and print media and so forth? They've worked hard to adapt.
Well, there will always be a newspaper one way or the other, may it be a digital or a paper product. But people will always want to read the news. So again, I'm optimistic for the future. Somebody once said, what if we took all of the news from the website and printed it out? We could call it a newspaper. And I believe the print paper will be around for years to come, as well as its digital version.
Yeah, thank goodness, and that the news will continue to be local as
Oh,
well.
absolutely. Yeah, all politics is local.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely right. Any additional questions, Katie, at all this morning?
Oh, I am so thrilled with your being here,
Thank you for having me.
and we have worked very, very hard to make this program available to people, and I know that John has, and Chris, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely, and on our TV show, in our own little local way, we're trying to, give local news to people as well. It's given us an opportunity to cover local people and local circumstances in a level of depth, I think, that you don't always see. So between you and maybe us to a little bit of degree, we can keep that local news coming.
Absolutely.
Yep. Well, Doug, this has been an absolutely wonderful program. Certainly a good way to close out our 2017-18 programming year, and it's nice to keep it all in the family with John and you, having you here this morning, and I'd like to thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
And so, I'd like to thank all of you folks. We will see you again in September. That's a guarantee with some more local programming. And wish you all to have a great summer. And now you know.